Hello everyone. We're going to take stock of the Bitcoin situation, of course, with the news that broke yesterday. There's some really heavy news. We're going to see together that Bitcoin has broken certain key levels, and that's great. Come on, let's settle in, let's get started, let's look at the news, the indicators, everything we need to know. But first, let's start with this crypto map, which is in the green, and that's really great. So let's start with the macroeconomic calendar. So today, Thursday, March 20th, we'll have the guard speech, but well, I think no one really cares about that, but especially at 1:30 p.m., there's weekly jobless claims, the manufacturing index, the Philadelphia party, and existing home sales. So that being said, we're going to go back in detail to what was said yesterday, because yesterday was really very important information from a macroeconomic point of view. And so precisely, if we retrace a little bit what was said in this FOMC meeting, and so we had our friend Jerome Powell who spoke yesterday to announce certain things to us. So already what we saw is that interest rates did not fall. But in any case, that was not a surprise. We knew it. Look, we had a precedent at 4.5. It was expected 4.5, and there was 4.5. So there is no surprise on the Fed's decision on interest rates. No surprise. We knew that we were going to have a 4.5 unless there was a nice surprise, but that was not the case. However, during the FOMC's economic projections, the FOMC statement, and the FOMC press conference, we learned several things, some of which are very important, including Jerome Powell, who told us that the economy is strong, inflation remains slightly elevated, and it will be difficult to know how severe the tariff-related inflation will be. We need not rush. We will wait for more clarity, as Jerome Powell stated at the FOMC conference. And so, casually, the fact of saying that the economy is strong, it still had rather interesting impacts on the Bitcoin side. We will look at that later, precisely from a technical analysis point of view. But during this conference, already he was rather reassuring. So that was what we expected. And I think that the market was expecting. We actually wanted to be reassured because when we saw the situation that it was taking, the market was really in a phase of fear. And so there suddenly, I think that Jerome Powell knew that if unfortunately he did not make a rather reassuring speech, we could have had some nice crashes on the financial markets. So that was perhaps not the goal. So that's why yesterday he was a little reassuring indeed. That calmed things down. It regained a little strength, and so much the better. So in historical news, the very first Solana futures ETFs will be launched tomorrow. That's also great news. So the volatility share introduces the Sol Z, which tracks Solana futures contracts, and the Sol T, which offers exposure with X2 leverage. So a new era for Solana. Frankly, that's still huge news, because having futures ETFs is still a pretty crazy thing. So yes, we saw that earlier. So here we are. We're going to take stock now of the technical indicators. We have this liquidity map. So you see, we went to look for the liquidity that was in the north. We had a cluster here at 86,000. We went to look for it. We also had a cluster here at 87,500. So there you see, we came to look for the liquidity that was to be looked for in the north. Now, be careful. We still have this cluster which is formed in the south at 81,100 and 79,900. So there we have a whole area of clusters. We will see together that Bitcoin is doing something interesting. So it's not sure that we will look for these key levels. We will see that later in the technical analysis. And on the side indeed of the crypto fear and greed index, we have returned to neutrality. We are at 49. So there you see we have left the zone of extreme fear. We have left the zone of fear. So once again, I will never say it enough, but this indicator once again gave us the bottom here when we were in extreme fear. Well, suddenly, it was indeed, once again, the moment on which we should rather invest. So there, in any case, that's it. We are returning to neutrality, and you will see it would be the same delirium all the time. There, when we will arrive little by little in the green, in the euphoria, you will see this is where everyone will rush. Whereas this each time is the mistake that everyone makes. When there is euphoria, in general, this is where it will crash. But unfortunately, this is where all beginners invest. If we have to invest, we must always invest when we are in fear. This is not financial advice. It is just pure logic. Come on, let's start the technical analysis. So on the Bitcoin side, very important things happened yesterday. So yes, we had Powell's speech and the whole FOMC. But above all, on the Bitcoin side, it had an impact, a major impact. Look, remember last night on my official Twitter, I asked you the question. I told you, do you think that the resistance of 85,016 was going to be broken, because look, last night we were right on it. And so there it is. We have our answer. Bitcoin has officially broken its resistance of 85,016. What does that mean concretely? It means that these 85,016 are now turning into a support zone. What does that mean concretely too? That means we're going to look for that key level. We're going to go back there. We're not naive. A lot of people are saying, yes, you said it was going to pump, but look, we're straight into the red. I remind you that when you open the slightest trading book, you see right away that when you break a key level, you come back and retest it. So it's completely normal, completely logical that today we wake up in the red, because yesterday we broke two key levels, the 85,016 and the 86,322. So now these are two key levels that are being retested. So we haven't yet come back to retest the 85,016, but there's still a very strong chance that we'll go back there today or maybe in the next few days. So we shouldn't be surprised, and above all, we shouldn't be naive. We know that Bitcoin has to retest the key levels it breaks. Now, in addition to that, I remind you that this 85,016 area was an important resistance zone, because I remind you that it was also the entry point for the moving average ribbon. So that too is very, very good news for Bitcoin. So the fact that we've reclaimed this 85,016 level is without a doubt very, very important news. Does this change anything with regard to the short and medium term bearish momentum? So I'm answering the question directly. For the medium term, for the moment, it doesn't change anything at all. That is to say that we are unfortunately still in a medium term downward trend. You see, as long as we are under this downward trend line that you see here in blue, the medium term trend, because here I am in the medium term, I am in day view. The medium term trend is bearish for the moment, unless in the next few days we manage to go back above this trend line. And therefore, in this case, we break the downward trend to start an upward trend. But for the moment, this is not yet the case. In any case, today, the key level will be at $89,134. And I even want to say that the key level in reality is the resistance, which will be just above at 89,631. So we absolutely have to regain these two key levels to break the medium-term bearish trend. Now, on the Bitcoin side, it's still excellent news to have re-entered the moving average band. We know that generally, when we re-enter this band, the goal would be to then reach the top of the band. So for now, for a day or two, there's a very strong chance of having this pullback and therefore of finding ourselves in the red. In fact, that's what we have right now. But we have to understand things clearly. Yesterday, we broke a major key level. And so now we're coming back to retest this major key level. So if that holds, that's excellent news. So right now, we're seeing confirmation of the breakout. Is the breakout we had yesterday a validated breakout? Or is it ultimately a false breakout that we're going to re-enter? The pullback will give us this information, and if it's a pullback that validates, that's excellent news. Anyway, if you follow me on my YouTube channel, you know for some time now, there are no surprises. We knew that Bitcoin was going to regain strength. We still had this huge bullish divergence designed since now on February 28th and 26th. So we knew that we had a return to the rise that was preparing. And so there, suddenly we have it. We have here, you see this bullish phase. So it is a bullish phase for the moment, which is just here. Once again, it is not validated in the medium term. It is just that since, in reality, March 10th, we have regained strength. But once again, I remind you, we must not mix things up. Since March 10th, we have regained strength, but the trend still remains, for the moment, bearish. The underlying trend remains bearish, despite the recovery of strength since March 10th. Nevertheless, thanks to all of this, it's still quite interesting because Bitcoin was finally able to break out of its range in which it had been for some time now. You see it here, this purple box. Remember what happened on Bitcoin? We had formed a descending channel, as you can see here. So we had a descending channel. This descending channel had been broken from above. So that was good news, break of the channel from above, except that in fact Bitcoin had decided not to push north, whereas normally a break of a descending channel is generally to bring about a bullish movement, except that here we were so much in a phase of uncertainty that Bitcoin had not decided to push, but had decided to move sideways, as you can see. And so we broke this consolidation phase, which was here at 84,773, then 85,016. So that indeed, that led us to the movement. And so there, you see it. We can see it perfectly here. So there, we are currently in the middle of the pullback. And so it wouldn't be crazy at all to come back and retest precisely these famous 84,746. In any case, the rule is simple. All the key levels that we break must be retested. So there, we are in the process indeed of preparing this retest phase.
And it should be noted, however, that in any case, as long as we are now above this top of the range, here, from a short-term point of view, because there, I have moved to the short term. From a short-term point of view, we are bullish. We are bullish. Finally, I want to say finally, because it has been a while since in the short term we were bearish. There, that's it. Officially, in the short term, the bearish trend is invalidated. We are officially currently in a short-term uptrend. Until, that's important to understand this sentence, until we go back below the range, below 84,746. So we are bullish for the moment. We can come back and retest this key level. We will still be bullish if we officially re-enter. On the other hand, no, we break the uptrend and then, unfortunately, we would go back to a sideways trend. So that's not what we want. But for the moment, short term, we are back bullish. Medium term, I remind you, we are still bearish. Despite the small uptrend, long term, I remind you, long term, we are extremely bullish in the long term. So what matters more, the short term or the long term? For me, it's the long term. And when I see this long-term Bitcoin configuration, which is extremely bullish, I tell myself that Bitcoin may, in reality, have hardly started its bull run, or perhaps started the first part of the bull run.
But there is the best for me that awaits us. Once again, this is not financial advice, but when we really see the graph, it is really, in truth, very pretty what it is doing to us. Even if for the moment, we have not yet resumed a validated medium-term bullish trend, but if ever Bitcoin manages to push and recover the key levels that I told you about, it could smell very, very good. So there, frankly, on the Bitcoin side, we are really not too bad on what it is doing to us. Then on the altcoin side, we start directly with our Ethereum, which regained a lot of strength yesterday. And that is rather cool. Look, Ethereum, it has finally decided to break its key levels. Remember, there you go. We have it perfectly here. There you go. Perfect. I had already drawn it for you. Like we are really perfect on my YouTube channel. There you go. We had done a whole consolidation phase on the Ethereum side. So there we knew. Anyway, once again, there is no surprise, no surprise. If you follow me on YouTube, we knew that the key level was here, the $1949. It is the level that I have repeated to you several times. And so we knew that if we broke this key level, Ethereum would explode. And that is what it did. Look, Ethereum, with the break of the key level, it still pushed a plus 6%. I don't know if you realize we are talking about the second most capitalized crypto. There are billions of dollars that are on this crypto. So when it gives us a plus 6%, we must understand that behind it, there are billions, millions and millions of dollars that are injected. So it's huge. A plus 6% on Ethereum, it's huge. It's huge. So suddenly we have to understand one thing. The altcoins, which are very little capitalized, if they make 10 to 15%, we will say that it's rather normal. But when Ethereum makes us a plus 6%, that's something quite extraordinary since it's the second most capitalized crypto. So there, on the Ethereum side, once again, no surprise, what did we look for? My resistance to the millimeter, look how it stopped right on it. We made wicks above the resistance, but look at the 2056. We came to look for it here, 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 here. We made 4 breakout attempts. None of them managed to validate. Conclusion, the resistance is really surgical on my YouTube channel. And so there, what do we see? We see that this resistance is rejecting us, which is completely logical after the bullish push. So we are currently in the middle of the pullback. We had also broken at the same time a key level. So the resistance of the 2017, which is transforming into support. So what is happening? We are coming back to retest these 2017. It is currently this that we are doing. And so if this key level comes to drop, we will return to look for the famous 1949. And once again, on the Ethereum side, we have in short-term view resumed an upward trend until we go back below these famous 1949. I remind you that as long as we are now above this high of range, you see it perfectly. The structure has been inverted with the low points higher and higher, the high points higher and higher. We are on a structure now which has become bullish unless now we invalidate all that. And so to invalidate, unfortunately, we would have to come back to retest this high of range, and we unfortunately reintegrate this range, and there you have understood that would invalidate the upward trend. So we will have a trend like this, bullish, and now if we do something like that, that invalidates everything, you have understood. So now on the side of Ethereum, in any case, as long as we are above $1949, it is excellent news from a medium-term point of view. On the other hand, let's not be naive. We are still bearish despite yesterday's nice bullish push, but we still remain bearish. On the Ethereum side, we will now have to attack 2146, or even for me, to really get back on track, we have to go back above 2560, so we are not there yet on the Ethereum side. Despite yesterday's push, we are still on an RSI, which remains extremely low. We are barely at 42, so we have room to push further. Frankly, it would be completely possible to come back here to look for this bottom of the range. There, the famous $2560. It would really be possible to do it. And I remind you that if we re-enter this range here from the bottom, the goal would be to look for the top of the range at 2857. And why not try to break it up? Well, it would still be very interesting to monitor what Ethereum is doing. It has fallen so much that there's still a chance of a rebound, and that will indeed involve recovering the key levels I mentioned. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, don't forget to like, comment and share as much as possible. Subscribe to the YouTube channel to receive daily videos about Bitcoin and altcoins. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you later.